Hi everyone. Today we're going to be learning how to find constant of proportionality using tables. Why do we have to learn this? Well, number one, we're going to build our number relationship skills to be a little bit stronger so we understand how numbers work together. Next, it'll be helpful when you're cooking or painting because proportional relationships are really important. If you want to double a recipe, for example, you want the food to taste the same. So it's really important to be able to know how to do that accurately. And then lastly, next year in 8th grade, you're going to be learning about slope, which is using the constant of proportionality in a slightly different way. So being really confident and knowing how to do this is really important. So let's start with our notes first. Okay, we're going to start with the fill in the blanks. So if two corresponding quantities are always in equivalent ratios, they are said to have a proportional relationship. Proportional just means that they're equivalent. So if I have two fractions, if they have the same value when they're simplified, they're proportional. Today's concept is constant of proportionality. So the constant of proportionality is the number that x is multiplied by to get y, and can be found by dividing y by x. You're going to hear that a lot today. So for our example, for every 5 tickets she purchases, Christy pays $4. Complete the table, identify the constant of proportionality. So I have this table, and I have one column says the number of tickets, the other column says the amount of money spent. I can see here that I have two numbers in the same row. I have 5 tickets, and then I spend $4 for those 5 tickets. If you look at the other rows, they only have one value. Now, when we find the constant of proportionality, we're going to be using y over x. You're going to be seeing this a lot, y over x. But what do those mean? Well, y is one column in the table, and x is the other column. But which is which? Y is always on the right side. Okay, that's one way that you can remember it. Y will always be on the right column. That means x is always on the left. Another fun way that I like to remember it is the alphabet, X, Y, Z. So X comes before Y, which comes before Z. So I have X, Y, Z, if I was to read the table from left to right. X, Y, Z. So using this fraction, y over x, I can now set up a fraction to find the constant of proportionality. So I'm going to take these two values and put 4 over 5. Notice that the 4 is in the y column and 5 is in the x column. Using my fraction, y over x, I'm going to make sure that whatever's in the y column goes on the top of my fraction in the numerator, and whatever's in the x column goes in the denominator of my fraction, or the bottom. And then we can just use a calculator to divide. Remember, fractions mean division. So 4 divided by 5 in your calculator equals 0.8. That is going to now be what we're going to use to find the other missing values. Okay, that means that if I draw an arrow, if I go from 5 to 4, what number do I have to multiply by to get 4? Well, that's really weird. To multiply usually makes numbers bigger. Why is this getting smaller? It's because this number that we ended up getting is smaller than 1. Anything smaller than 1 makes the value at the end smaller. So I'm going to multiply 5 times 0.8, and that gives me 4. Now, if I draw the same arrow on the next row, I'm going to end up using the same value as well. So I'm going to multiply by 0.8. Now, in my calculator, I just have to put 12 times 0.8, which is what? 9.6. That means for our 12 tickets, Christy is going to be paying $9.60. We're going to skip this row here for a second and jump down to the bottom. I'm going to draw the same arrow. Notice that it's all the values that are in the x column. And I'm multiplying by the same value as the other arrows. So 1 times 0.8 is 0.8. Let's go back to this row up here. Since I don't have a number in the x column, I can't multiply something times 0.8 to equal 20. That's weird. It's not easy. So let's draw an arrow going the other way. Well, but if my arrow's backwards, That means I can't multiply. I have to do the opposite. Well, what's the opposite of multiplying? We're going to divide. Okay, so when we divide, we're going to divide by the same number, 0.8. In your calculator, you're going to put 20 divided by 0.8, which equals 25. This means that Christy will buy 25 tickets for $20. So what is the constant of proportionality here? The constant of proportionality is 0.8. Okay, if you look at your table, in that middle area where the arrows are, I have 0.8 on every single arrow. That is our constant of proportionality. This is in your textbook. A recipe says that 2 cups of dry rice will serve 6 people. Complete the table as you answer the questions. Be prepared to explain your reasoning. Okay, so we have 2 questions here. How many people will 10 cups of rice serve? And how many cups of rice are needed to serve 45 people? If I look at my table over here, I see the 10 cups of rice and the 45 people. Well, let's start with our rule. Our rule is y over x. Y over x is just telling us which number goes on top and which number goes on the bottom. Can you remember which column of your table is y? If you said that that was the number of people, you're correct. Our y column is the number of people. Our x column is the cups of rice. So if I take y over x, anything in the y column goes first, or on top of our fraction, and anything in the x column goes on the bottom of our fraction. So we're going to end up with 6 over 2, or 6 divided by 2. In our calculator, we get 3. Okay, so that means that if I take 2 cups of rice and I multiply it by 3, I'm going to be able to serve 6 people. Well, now that we have this number, we can use it on the next row, because I have 3 in the x column. I'm going to multiply 3 times 3, which equals 9. Your answer should be in the y column. Our next row has the y value missing, but we can still use that times 3 because we have a number in the x column. 10 times 3 is 30. Here's the tricky one. We don't have a number in the x column, so we're going to have to go backwards, which means we can't multiply by 3. Instead, we're going to divide by 3. So 45 divided by 3 is 15. So 15 cups of rice will serve 45 people. Let's try one more together before you try one on your own. A recipe says that 6 spring rolls will serve 3 people. Complete the table. So I have number of spring rolls, I have a 6, 30, and 40. And then number of people, I have a 3, jump a couple rows, and then I have 28 people. So what is the constant of proportionality here? Let's use our rule, y over x. Which column is y? The number of people, because that is the column on the right. Y is always on the right side of your table. So y over x, I'm going to end up with 3 over 6, as you see over here. Well, in our calculator, when we divide 3 divided by 6, we end up with 1/2. You'll probably see 0.5. They're the same number. So drawing my arrows, since I have a number in the x column, I can multiply that by 1 over 2, or 1/2. Well, 6 times 1/2. Or, if you want to think about it, you can go backwards. What's half of 6? Your answer will always be in the y column, 3. So if I continue the arrow, because I have another value in the x column, half of 30 is 15. I can do it again because I have a 40 in the x column. Half of 40 is 20. Do you remember what we do here? We can't multiply, so we're going to have to do what? We're going to have to divide by 1/2. Well, 28 divided by 1/2, that's weird. That sounds weird. It feels weird, okay? But remember back at the beginning of the year when we were working with fractions? Dividing by 1/2 is the opposite as multiplying by 2. So let's just change it to times 2. That's a lot easier. 28 times 2 is 56. So 56 spring rolls will feed 28 people. Okay, here's a problem that I want you to try to do on your own. Make sure that you label the columns with your x and y, and then try to use the rule y over x to solve for the constant of proportionality. Go ahead and pause the video and try to solve these missing values on your own. Let's make sure that we have the right answers. So y over x, you should have used 10 over 4. 10 is in the y column, 4 is in the x column. 10 divided by 4 in our calculator should equal 2.25. Okay, that means that 4 times 2.25 is 10. And since my x column is filled with values, not on the y column, I can use this times 2.25 on every single row. Did you do the same thing? Okay, if you did, now you can use your calculator. 1 times 2.25 is 2.25. 6 times 2.25 is 13.5. And lastly, 14 times 2.25 is 31.5. Our constant of proportionality is 2.25 because that is the number on our arrows, and it's the same through the whole table. That means that in the end, to make 14 quarters equal in dimes, the same value, I would need 31.5 dimes to equal the value of 14 quarters. Now for your turn. You're going to go back to your notes. I want you to jot down anything that might help you remember how to do this so you can refer back to it later without having to look at the video again. And then I want you to make your own table where the constant of proportionality is 2.5.